Good morning, good afternoon, and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of Sales TV Live. Today, we're mastering sales strategy. We're joined by Amy Franko. Amy is an advisor, speaker, and best-selling author. As founder of the Strategic Selling Academy, Amy's strategic selling framework has been used to help organizations build consistent sales growth and retain top talent. Amy, welcome.
It is great to be here. Thank you so much. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And welcome to everybody who's joining us today.
As are we. So, Amy, please tell us a little bit about you, your journey into sales, and where you are today.
Yeah. So the Cliff Notes version of that story is I got my start in technology. So I kind of fell into sales. It was my first job out of college. I was in inside sales and got my start in technology. So the first 10 years of my career, I spent in the technology sector. I worked for companies like IBM and Lenovo and had a variety of client-facing roles, including as a quota-carrying salesperson. And then, 17 years ago, I took a big pivot into entrepreneurship, started my own organization, and that has evolved and changed over the years. But what it looks like today is I spend time with mostly mid-market organizations, CEOs, sales leaders, and I work in sales and growth strategy. So help them get to what their next iteration is of their organization. And then also helping them look at the pieces that are connected to the sales organization, process improvement, technology, anything in that realm. And then also the skill development, which you alluded to with the Strategic Selling Academy. So I love what I do. I work in all things sales all day, and I'm really fortunate to do what I do with the clients I get to work with.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, I want to jump right into it. When you talk about a sales strategy, what exactly do you mean?
So sales strategy it can mean different things to different people. When I'm working with my clients, I am typically working with leaders who are looking to grow to next. And despite all of the just the chaos that's going on around us, there will always be some kind of chaos going on. But those focused leaders who say, despite all of that going on, we're looking to get to this next stage of our organization. So in order to get there, you have to be able to have at least a vision of the next, few years out, but it's your strategy that will help you set the path to get there. So I think of strategy as your path. It's your big picture path, but then also the really specific activities that make the most sense for your business, for your customers, that you're committed to take to get there. So that to me, and very simplified, is what strategy is. And I find that oftentimes we really make it more complicated than it needs to be.
So, if it's that easy, why do so many organizations struggle without one?
Yeah, it's maybe simple but not easy for a lot of reasons. Some of the reasons are external, changes in the economy, changes in your market, major changes, especially if you're working in a global environment. Those pressures and changes are real. So sometimes those make us shift the direction in which we're headed. So sometimes you might have to take a sharp right turn. Sometimes you might just have to change the navigation in a path a little bit, but it can set you off course, right? And you have to be really vigilant about figuring out, are we going in the right path, going off course a little bit, or do we need to course correct and get back to where we're going? So you have external factors. A lot of times, though, it's internal factors. There are strategy leaks, if you will. So it can be things like accountability. It can be things like infrastructure, technology. It can simply lose its luster and lose priority because other things start to crowd in and take its place. So it takes a lot of vigilance as a leader to figure out what's outside and what's inside, and how do I determine if I need to maybe shift what it is I'm doing.
You talk about having a strategy to get to next, the next iteration and whatever your objectives are. But not because that makes it sound like it's a challenge, and it isn't. It's a question. Lots of the organizations that we talk to, the challenge is that they cannot They have no pipeline. They have no way of generating new pipeline. Their marketing, sorry, I'm quotes. Their marketing isn't delivering the stream of leads that it used to. Sales is in a tough place for so many different reasons. Customers are generally quite anesthetized to salespeople. I don't want you trying to sell me something. I'm too busy trying to deal with my own issues to have you pitching in. And salespeople often struggling with the stress of being in a sales environment. It can be for many people quite a tough life because you spend your whole time being told no and having the phone put down on you. So how do you still maintain a strategy and a belief in growth when many of the challenges are quite short-term tactical challenges, like we're not going to hit our number this quarter, or this thing isn't failed, or we've pinned all of our hopes on going to this event and we've gone to the event and actually we've got nothing back from it. So how do you maintain that dream and that vision and that growth strategy and plan?
Yeah. There's something, I didn't coin this phrase, but there's a phrase called strategic speed, which is the ability to look simultaneously, like you have one eye to the future and one eye to what's in front of you. And sales, like top of the house, CEOs, chief revenue officers, leaders and managers, all the way down to the sales professional, the really successful leaders and professionals are able to do those things. Keep an eye to the future and think strategically, but honestly, sometimes you just have to get really tactical. I was working with another client last week who has some specific revenue goals that they need to get to. They can see it in their pipeline. They don't necessarily have a pipeline problem. They have some sales qualified leads. They have a chunk that's sales qualified, and then they have a larger chunk that they consider to be marketing qualified. So the conversation was really tactical and really focused, where you have to get to this goal. It's there. You just have to work what's there. So sometimes we let the big picture, shiny objects get in the way of what's right in front of us, where in this particular case anyway, the pipeline's there. You just got to go work it and work those opportunities through to get to the goal. So that's one. It's a thought process, but also understanding when you have to get really tactical.
Yeah, I get
We
that.
have some comments from our audience. Bob Britton says, strategy equals why, tactics equals what and how. He also says, sales, the easiest hard job you'll ever have. Or is it the hardest, easiest job?
That might depend on the day of the week. I don't know.
Yeah, right. I know you said that sales strategy will vary for each organization, but for those organizations right now struggling without one at all, what are the core elements that they should be looking at? What should they be including in a sales strategy?
Yeah, if I were to break that down into three things for somebody who maybe you either don't have a strategy or you have one that it's collected a lot of digital dust and you feel like you're starting over, right? If you take a look at three things to at least get you started, you'll get down the path. Now, this is some work that I have done with an advisor of mine, a gentleman by the name of Alan Weiss. And I have used some of his strategy, which I'll share here, some of his strategy process. He uses a process called sentient strategy, which I actually will work with my clients on. And the first thing is really paying attention to what's happening in your environment. What is happening in your environment? And then what are the choices that are available to you within the environment? Also paying attention to your competitors and companies that are outside your competitive wheelhouse. What are they doing to be successful? What are some of their challenges? So paying attention to big picture and just bubbling up that level of awareness is a really great place to start. Then to get a little bit more tactical, I will help clients identify specific work streams that they want to focus on. To the earlier point about lead generation might be a work stream. Or I need to look at the talent in my organization might be another work stream. So what are the work streams that are going to help you get to your goals? This assumes that you have done some work and understand where you want to be in the next 1, 2, 3 years. So you do need to have at least that baseline of where you want to be, but then to get tactical, what are the work streams that are going to get you there? And then what are the really core activities that will help you to get there? And if you start to look at those three things and you frame it up for yourself, it gives you at least a track to run on, especially if you're either new or you're refreshing something that you haven't picked up in a while.
So, what's the difference between a sales strategy and a sales methodology?
Yeah, so I like to think of it as a little bit of a three-legged stool. So you have your kind of vision for your organization. Your strategy is going to help you realize your vision. Your methodology is what's going to be available to help you realize your strategy. So if I kind of break this down, and this is getting more into actual sales opportunities and working opportunities in the pipeline. So when I'm working with clients, I break down process and methodology. Sales process is what's going to help you. It's that step by step that's going to help you get to your goals. You might use a process to help you realize your strategy. You'll likely use a process to help you with your specific opportunities. Methodology is a little bit different, which is the tools, the skills, the technology, the things that support you in helping you to grow sales or to realize your strategy. And they're not linear in order. You may pick different things at different times based on what you need. So methodology is like a chess match. It's picking where you want to go next. And things like process are those step by step. It's the step by step that helps you get there.
I heard you mention strategy leaks.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
It's all those places where you don't realize your strategy. Everybody gets excited about setting strategy, right? It's the implementation of strategy where things can tend to fall down, and there is this gap between strategy creation and strategy implementation. So leaks are all those places where strategy can get away from you, and then you don't get to realize the strategy, and you're a year out, 2 years out, and you look back and you're like, you know what? We didn't get to 30% or 50% of what it is that we wanted to accomplish. So it's those little places where strategy does not get implemented or realized. It could be things like personal accountability, like leadership does not hold the rest of the organization accountable to implementing strategy. It could be things like technology or infrastructure that stop you from realizing your strategy. It's typically people or structures that stop us from realizing strategy. And we have to know how our organization operates so that we can figure out if we're going to put a strategy in place, where are all the places that we could fall short with it?
So what happens when the strategy that you put in place is too onerous on the organization? So typically, my strategy is, or my vision is, I want to double in size in 12 months. And everybody goes, yeah, that's a fantastic idea. That's what we're going to work towards. And then you start to map out all of the things that need to change and need to happen for you to achieve that. And it's like, this list is 8 years worth of work.
Right.
So how do you reconcile those two things? Because like you said, strategy is the big dream and the vision, and everyone's really excited about that. Well, of course they are. What they're not excited about is the getting your shoulder to the wheel and really shoving to get there.
Yeah. Onerous can take on a lot of different forms, right? So onerous can be, we've created a strategy that's too complicated. There is simply too much in here, and we simply can't get it done for a lot of reasons. Onerous can be, our goals are unrealistic. So for example, especially over the last 3-4 years, sales numbers have been all over the board in different industries. No matter what industry I work in, challenges with forecasting growth over the last 3 to 4 years, just simply because of COVID. So when you're forecasting from bad, challenging data, it's really hard to get to where you want to go next. So there might be things in the environment in your organization that are onerous in the sense that the data isn't good, or we're setting some unrealistic expectations, and there's no way that we're going to be able to execute on all of this. What I found to be helpful with the clients I work with is you might have something that you might have kind of that far off picture, but can you chunk it down to the next year, maybe 2 at the most? And the more focus that you can put, and that means tough decisions. Like some things are just going to have to fall off the plate, to your point. The more intentional we can be and the more focused we can be, you can make great success in 2 or 3 work streams versus making a little bit of success in 5 or 10.
Yeah. So how do you manage clients? So clients come to you to help them set a sales strategy. Their dream is, we're going to grow 30% year on year for the next 5 years, and then we're going to exit the business and we'll retire and live on a big yacht off the coast of Florida, or whatever the dream is. That's the vision.
Right.
And then you look at the organization and what's going on, and you say to them, you're delusional. You are a million miles away from that, because it strikes me that every founder has a dream of A, B, and C. We're all going to end up like Mark Zuckerberg or Sergey Brin or whoever it is. And actually, we're as an organization, we're keeping our head above water, or we're laying people off, or we've just bought a new office that we can't afford to fund, or whatever the scenario is for your organization. How do you get people to take that kind of that reality shower? It's like, okay, this is what's really going on, and these are the things that you need to address.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up the couple of different scenarios there, because I might work with a publicly traded organization that has, you have shareholders, you have the public that you're accountable to. You might have a new venture that is pre-revenue. It's an idea, right, that somebody's trying to spin up. Or those are two kind of extremes, and then you have the middle ground, which might be mid-market organizations. They might have private investment. They are growing organically. They're growing by acquisition. So part of it is looking at each organization in its own internal environment and then placing it into the larger environment that they operate in. But a very simple question, it's a simple question, but it's hard to answer with what you just shared, is you're here today and you're looking to get to here. What will it take to get from A to B? It's an open-ended question for a CEO, for a founder, for a leader. What will it take? Let's just start to list off what will it take. And then when you start to go down the list and you realize, I thought it was maybe 3 things, but it's 20, then the light bulb starts to come on of, okay, we have this list of things we could do. What's going to help us make the most progress? So it's oftentimes the open-ended question that gets them thinking and talking that starts to click into place, that we might be taking on more than what's realistic or even what we need to get to our next goal.
That must happen all the time to you, because I'm sure that people that run businesses, they have lofty aspirations, and they're still walking to work with holes in their shoes because they've not got enough revenue to pay themselves. And I'm sure that this is a repeating pattern, because we see it with a huge number of organizations that we talk to, that their dreams and the vision that they have is not being played out in their execution for whatever reason.
Yeah. I used to have a coach who had this great saying, and the saying was, you can't read the label from inside of the jar. And so many leaders, just because they're so heads down with so much going on, they're living in their own world. And it can be really challenging to look up and out, because you're constantly getting sucked back down into tactics, if you will. So it often takes an outside voice, which is why they work with me, because they need that outside voice and want the outside voice to ask the questions that maybe they're not getting inside the organization.
Yeah, I can see that.
You recently shared with me that you started a VC fund. Oftentimes, tech founders and startups don't know how to sell. How do you help them? Where do you even begin?
Yeah. So, well, I wish I founded a VC fund. I'm a part of a VC fund, which is new.
Okay.
It's called Accelerating Angels. It's an angel fund, and it's based here in Columbus, Ohio. So to give them a little plug, their vision is to invest in women founders who are creating disruptive technologies in the marketplace. Could be healthcare, could be fintech, AI, but looking to invest in these types of organizations. But to an organization, the sales and marketing formula puzzle is something all of them are looking to solve, want to solve. So they know that that's, you can get the money in from venture funds, private equity, whatever, but you have to be able to create the flywheel that generates the revenue and generates the profit in order to get to a point where you are attractive for someone to buy. There's a lot of the same qualities or same conversation we're having here applies to them, but they have to oftentimes work more quickly because they need to get somewhere in the next 6 months, maybe a year at the most, because they're going to run out of cash if they don't. So there's an urgency to it that sometimes other companies that are more mature, they have a little bit of a luxury of a longer runway. I'd say with venture-backed organizations, it's just the runway is so much shorter.
And urgency and sales go so well together, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because there's an urgency, but sometimes urgency causes us to maybe make decisions that we wouldn't make otherwise. So it's balancing urgency with being intentional about it and making the right choices. But to your point, we need to get them to a certain speed so that we can see results and those results can build off of each other.
Along those lines, how can sales leaders ensure their strategy adapts to rapidly changing market conditions?
Yeah. If you've ever created a strategy, if anybody watching here has ever created a strategy and then you don't look at it for 6 months or you don't look at it for a year, that's probably one of the most common ailments that I see, which is once you create the strategy, you absolutely have to be looking at it continually. At a minimum, probably once a month, depending on where you're headed and the intensity of your strategy. So a startup is probably a good example where they're going to probably be looking at it more often. But if you aren't looking at it as a leader, no one else is looking at it either. So at a minimum, when you create it, it has to be front and center all the time in all your conversations, especially with your executive team. And then that has to be cascaded down to, it could be sales, it could be marketing, it could be other parts of the business. But that's probably one of the most common problems that I see. It's simply just not looked at often enough, and then it loses its momentum.
And how do you know if it's a successful strategy? I mean, revenue, obviously, but are there other things that you would consider?
Yeah, sure. So this is part of the kind of the beauty and simplicity that if you have 2 or 3 kind of categories that you're working on. So some common ones in my world might be, if I use lead generation as an example, team is often another one. New markets might be another one. So those are probably some common ones that I see. When you have only maybe 2 or 3 focus areas that you're working from, it becomes easier to see, engage, and measure how successful you are. So the simplicity part is important. And then when you have very specific metrics that you want to accomplish, you can measure against those. Some metrics will be quantitative and some will be qualitative. But when you have those in place, then you can say, are we on track? Are we off track? Do we need to maybe shift something? Do we need to try something a little bit different to get back on track? So the simplicity is a really important part of that. And I'd also say revisiting it regularly so that it's not guesswork about whether you're on track or off track.
And just like that, we're out of time. Amy, this has been great. How can people learn more and where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the 2 best places to find me on LinkedIn, I'm Amy Franko on LinkedIn. And then secondly, please visit amyfranko.com and you free resources out there, and you can also join the mailing list out there.
Excellent. Thank you. Speaking of mailing lists, we now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at SalesTV.live and click on newsletter. This has been another edition of Sales TV Live. On behalf of the panelists and everyone at Sales TV, to Amy and to our audience, thank you for being an active part of today's conversation, and we'll see you